Cleopatra, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt, best known for her relationship with Roman general Mark Antony, often depicted in popular culture as a mesmerizing seductress with magical powers. How much of this is true? What was her real story? Welcome to my channel. And today, let's find out who was Pharaoh Cleopatra VII. Cleopatra VII Philopator, more commonly referred to simply as Cleopatra, was the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt. She was born on July 69 BC in the city of Alexandria, which at that time was the capital of Egypt. She was the daughter of King Ptolemy XII and his sister Cleopatra V. Try to keep up with the names because there are a lot of them and they all sound alike. Her mother died when Cleopatra was very young, and her father married their sister, also named Cleopatra. Yes, it can get confusing. Anyway, when Cleopatra was only 14 years old, her father died, and she became the ruler of Egypt. But she did not rule alone. She ruled alongside her younger sister. The teenage years can be awkward at times, right? Well, imagine being in charge of an entire kingdom. But Cleopatra and her sister got through it, and they ruled together until Cleopatra's sister died under mysterious circumstances. Some historians believe that Cleopatra had something to do with her sister's death, but we don't know for sure. What we do know is that after Cleopatra's sister died, Cleopatra became the sole ruler of Egypt. Now, unlike her predecessors, Cleopatra was not Greek, but Egyptian-born, and so she was not fluent in Greek, although she knew the language. She was fluent in Egyptian and knew several other languages. Cleopatra was considered highly intelligent, witty, and charming. She was skilled in mathematics, science, and medicine. History books say that she was a great orator and could mesmerize her audience by switching from one language to another while speaking. During her reign, she reformed Egypt's currency and introduced the world's first paper money. The Egyptian rulers at that time were pretty much figureheads of the real power in Egypt resided with the high priests of the goddess Isis, who controlled the country's economy. The high priests were also the ones who declared Cleopatra the divine ruler of Egypt. According to them, Cleopatra was the new Isis, and her son Horus, Ptolemy XV, was the new king of the gods. As divine rulers, Cleopatra and her son were considered to have magical powers. They were believed to have healing powers and were even believed to be able to control the weather. Romans called this the Egyptian disease and believed that Cleopatra used her powers to influence people and make them fall under her spell. But why did the Egyptians consider Cleopatra divine? It was because she promoted herself as a goddess. In fact, during her reign, she built a temple to herself in the city of Alexandria. On the walls of the temple, she described herself as the new Isis and called herself the embodiment of beauty and light. Cleopatra also had a series of coins minted in her own likeness, which further solidified her divine status in Egyptian society. However, among the common folk, her image was far from divine. She was considered vain, arrogant, and merciless. Her obsession with being called a goddess made her unpopular among the commoners. So when Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt in 48 BC, the Alexandrians welcomed him as a liberator. At that time, Caesar was the most powerful man in the Mediterranean, and he helped Cleopatra to gain full control over Egypt. In return, Cleopatra gave Caesar a huge amount of gold and an elephant named Cynthia. Cleopatra sent Cynthia to Rome, where it was paraded around the streets to celebrate Caesar's victory at the Battle of Pharsalus. When Caesar and Cleopatra spent some intimate moments together, he was smitten. According to Plutarch, the Roman historian who wrote the biography of Caesar, Cleopatra was determined to seduce the Roman leader. So she rolled up in a carpet and was taken into Caesar's palace unnoticed. Caesar was indeed enamored with Cleopatra. He commissioned a number of statues in her likeness and even planned to make her his queen. Unfortunately, both Caesar and Cleopatra lost their lives before they could seal their union. After Caesar was assassinated, Cleopatra found herself in a precarious situation. Her alliance with Caesar was well known, and now his adopted son Octavian, later known as Augustus, was eager to take revenge. Fearing for her life, Cleopatra fled to her lover's palace, fortified itself against Octavian's forces. But after a 10-month siege, her resources ran out and she surrendered to Octavian. According to the account by Roman historian Appian, when Cleopatra's forces left the palace, Octavian entered the royal apartments and found Cleopatra lying dead on a ceremonial chest, having apparently bitten into an apple laced with poison. However, there's another version of events that tells the story of how Cleopatra took her own life with the help of a venomous snake. Both accounts have been popularized by Shakespeare in his play Antony and Cleopatra and have persisted in modern culture ever since. Cleopatra was just 39 years old when she died. Her relationship with Roman general Mark Antony played a huge role in shaping the political landscape of the Mediterranean. After meeting at a party hosted by Antony in 44 BC, the two began an affair that resulted in the birth of twins, a boy and a girl. To accommodate his mistress and her children, Antony left his wife, Octavia the Younger, and married Cleopatra, breaking off relations with Rome. Cleopatra took the title of Queen of Kings and paraded around in a golden chariot pulled by 8 elephants. But not everyone was happy with the marriage. Octavian, who at that time was just Antony's stepson, felt that his adoptive father was being treated unjustly and used it as an excuse to start a war against Antony and Cleopatra. In 32 BC, Octavian defeated Antony's fleet at the Battle of Actium. This defeat forced Antony and Cleopatra to flee to Egypt. In Alexandria, they lived together in the palace of the Ptolemies. Afterward, Antony fell ill and died, possibly from a self-inflicted sword wound. Cleopatra was furious about the way her lover died and refused to allow his body to be embalmed, believing that his soul would become trapped in the mortal coil if she did so. She ordered that his body be burned instead. His ashes were then buried next to the tomb of Alexander the Great. As for Cleopatra, she continued to rule Egypt until her death in 30 BC. When Octavian finally marched into Alexandria, Cleopatra committed suicide. Octavian incorporated Egypt into the Roman Empire and made it a province of Rome. He renamed Alexandria to Caesarea and allowed the worship of Caesar and himself as divine figures in the city. It's important to note that Cleopatra is often remembered primarily as the romantic partner of both Caesar and Antony. However, this portrayal doesn't do justice to the many accomplishments of this powerful woman. Cleopatra was the first woman to rule Egypt on her own since her mother, Cleopatra V, and the first native Egyptian to do so in nearly 300 years. She was an intelligent and capable ruler who left a lasting legacy on the history of Egypt. Now, thanks to Hollywood, Cleopatra has been depicted as a femme fatale with supernatural powers. But in reality, Cleopatra was just a shrewd politician who used her intellect and charm to navigate the treacherous waters of Roman politics. Despite the enduring popularity of the myth, it's important to remember that Cleopatra was a real historical figure whose life and accomplishments deserve to be remembered and celebrated. What do you think? Is there anything that I missed? Let me know in the comments, and if you like the video, please hit the like button. Thanks for watching.